Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games back with another cool arcade repair video for you today. Just the other day we picked up this old Asteroids from an operator who had it sitting in their back room dying a slow, painful death. And we bought it from them and we're going to bring it back to life. So it's got a bunch of stuff missing, but we're going to put it all back together and make it play again. Hey buddy. So it's got the marquee still. That's good. The control panel is actually in pretty good shape. I think if we clean that up, we might touch up the black on the front, but all this looks pretty good, and it's the silk screened original version. So it looks like we might get away with not having to put a brand new one on it or an overlay on it. The coin door, they have stolen all the stuff off of. Shameful. Shameful. The sides, this side looks pretty good. It's got a little bit of scratching, but not bad. We can deal with that. This side is maybe a little better. Looks pretty good too. That'll come off. It's got a little bit of red rubbed on it from somewhere. Hope that's not blood. We'll see. That should come off. The monitor is in there, but buddy, she doesn't look like she's been working in a long time. Lots of dust on it. And so someone has stolen the power brick out of it. Ugh. Why would you do that? You stole the heart out of it. But guess what? We bought another power brick. So we've got the power brick. The power supply is missing. But guess what? We've got another power supply. So we should be able to put that right back in. Let me see here. See how this connector has 4 pins? That's an Asteroids. Asteroids Deluxe was almost identical, but the 4 pins were in a square. But anyway, so we've got that power supply, or we might have an Asteroids Deluxe one. We got one or the other. And then the game board is missing, but they did have the game board, so this game board goes in it. We'll put that back in. Also, the tube is in it like we said. It has the deflection board and it has the high voltage board, but they don't have the freaking cage on it. Man, why do people do stuff like that? That thing will work without the cage, but sometimes it makes the screen wiggle like that. But we'll see. Maybe we got one of those, or we could make one maybe. And then also we have the cardboard bezel that goes around the tube, and then also we have the plexiglass bezel that goes in front. So pretty much everything's in it. It was missing the power supply, it was missing the brick in the bottom, it's missing the cage around the high voltage unit, and it's missing all of the parts off of the coin door. Ugh. So that's what we got to put back together. So the first thing that we're going to do is, oh, and it's missing the power cord, it looks like. Crazy. So the first thing we got to do is pull out the power brick, because that's where all the power comes into the game. So I'll vacuum out the bottom of it, see if I can find any of the screws where they pillaged the game, put stuff back. We got to rig up a, well, we can make a good power cord. It won't be rigged up, it'll be nice. Got to make a new power cord and all of that. So let's look at my power brick that I bought. So this is the power brick. So The power comes in from the wall right into this plug. So I'm going to take this big old long cord I've got here that went to something else, and I'm going to put a new plug on it that will fit right in there, and then we will have a really nice electrical plug cord. So a lot of the grounds from the cabinet go into these connectors. So the guy I bought this from, or somebody, cut it out of some cabinet. Ugh, what are they doing? Now the one out there, to their credit, they didn't cut it out. So the wires are still there that the little connectors are still there. Now if it was cut, you could fix that too. You could put a connector on it. So we can fix whatever. It's no problem. It's no problem. There's a plug that plugs in here. That's the switches. So the power comes back out of this, goes through some switches. Like if the back door's open, it opens the switch and kills power to the game. If the front door's open, it opens the switch, kills power to the game. If you flick the switch on the back of the cabinet, you turn the game off by the switch killing the game. So those all plug in right there. This is the main fuse, which who knows if it's the right one. So we're going to look up the fuse values and make sure all the fuses are correct. Sometimes people will take out a fuse and not know how fuses work, and they'll put the wrong voltage back in, or the wrong amperage back in, and it'll make stuff fry, and you don't want that. That would be bad. So we'll check all these to make sure that they're good and that they're the right voltage. And then we've probably done 10 videos on these. We need to swap out this capacitor. All these little things here, see how weird this looks? That's how that came from the factory. These are voltage jumpers. So if you put, I suppose this yellow one's the one that's supposed to be in, but if you take this, if you unplug the yellow one and plug in the gray one instead, it basically makes everything work off of a different voltage out of the wall. So right now we're getting 120 or 115 out of the wall, but this can also run if you get 220 out of the wall. Maybe you plug this red one in, or if you're in some other country, if you're in Japan and it's 100 volts, maybe you plug this one in. And so depending on which one of these jumpers you plugged in, it makes different wires go different places on this transformer, which makes all of your voltages that come out of the transformer and run through these fuses all be the right voltage. So if it's set on USA, you just leave that plug there. And then this one is where the marquee light plugs in. So there's a light up at the top that needs 120 volts to turn on. So there's a plug that comes all the way down the cabinet and plugs in right there. You can see where there's a space for another one, because on some games there might be some other light that lights up, or there might be a fan that needs 120 volts. So what we're going to do is we're going to check all the fuses to make sure they're the right ones and clean them, and then put them back to make sure none of them are blown up. And then we're going to change this, what they call the big blue. So they call it big blue because it's the big ass blue capacitor in the bottom of the game. It is a 27,000 UF capacitor. So one of the things you run into is that sometimes the that capacitor starts going bad, and what it'll do is it basically takes ripple out of the DC voltage. But when it starts going bad, it allows AC ripple in the DC voltage, which can give you all kinds of problems. It can blow up transistors on the monitor, fry chips on the board, make things come on sometimes and not work sometimes. It's not necessarily bad. You can test it. The way you test it is on the bottom. These are the two. One of these is 10 volt, I think it's this one, and one's ground. And so you can, this is a DC voltage, I think it's 10.6 volts, something like that. You can check for AC on this, and if you get AC above like half a volt, the thing's bad. It's starting to go bad. So a lot of them are still fine, but since we sell them, we're going to put it in somebody's house. It may be fine now, but it might go bad 2 years from now, so we don't like that. So we put a brand new one in it, just so that theoretically that should make it where it won't go bad for quite a while. But sometimes if you buy these used, or if you buy these new old stock, they're bad just from sitting on the shelf. The way capacitors go bad is there's like a paste in there, and the paste dries out after a while. And once it does, it won't do its little magic juju that's supposed to do in there whenever it gets power. So it just doesn't work right. So you take the cap out, put this one in. We're going to check these two diodes to make sure they're fine. They should basically, you should be able to, your meter should show that they have a reading one way, but there's no connection the other way. So if they're fine, we'll put it back in the game. Now if this is, these are just general like rectifier diodes, so you don't have to put the exact part in it. It just has to be the same amperage or higher. Some of the later ones didn't even have this board. It just everything connected directly to here, or I guess there may have been a bridge rectifier somewhere or something, but it's wired a little different. So if you're messing with one of these, you may not have this exact setup. Okay, so I looked it all up. I put our new power plug on it. These are, the yellow is for 120, the violet is for 100, the brown is for 240, and the blue is for 220. So the yellow should be plugged in for America. So we're good. Swapped out the big blue to the big black. Here's the old big blue going straight in the trash. By the way, they have a date code on them right there. So this particular one was made the year 1980, the fifth week of 1980. So we're going to retire that one. 39 years is pretty good. This one, I don't know how to decipher the date code. So who knows, but I bought it from Great Plains Electronics. They had new ones made not too long ago, so it's probably just a couple years old. And then I thought there were little stickers that told you that the amps, but if you look close, it's actually on the metal has it stamped in it, but you can't hardly read it. I think this actually mounts in the cabinet the other way, so all of this will be upside down, but I wrote these in. So 7 amp, 7 amp, 7 amp, 3, 3, 3. They're written on there, stamped in there, but you can barely read it, and they go the other way. So I probably should have wrote them the other way. But hey, we're all right. And they were all right. Nobody had the wrong fuse anywhere. So that isn't that great? That's just wonderful. And the two diodes tested fine on the big blue. So we're ready to put it in the game. I'll take these loose and put the actual ground wires to that. We're ready to put it in the game and see if she comes on. We have cleaned out the bottom, and man, it was filthy, but it was all just dust. Probably because it's been sitting around with the door off and stuff, which is, it's cool, yeah, just dust. So we cleaned it all up. In the bottom, I found the 4 screws that originally held the thing in, and I put them back in. I like stuff like that. To me, that's cool, right? And then I even found the 2 nuts that were originally on the other one that held all these in. So hell, I put them back on. So now I've got 2 nuts that I don't have anything to do with. You get the point. And the switch, the power switch, is tore all to crap. So we got to put a new power switch in it. That's fine. I got a nice new one here. We're going to put in, get it back like Hollywood. So this thing had been horribly assaulted by people picking parts off of it, possibly for years. I got the cord threaded back through the hole. We'll get all this cleaned up a little better once we get it running, but for now I've also unplugged the monitor, because if this power brick sends out crazy voltage, it might screw up our monitor. We don't want that. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the switch in, and then we're gonna turn it on. And the only thing that could possibly turn on whenever we do that is the marquee up top. These little safety switches, we'll have both of them out. We got our new power switch in, and we've got it turned on. And the only sign of life, if you look at the marquee light, it's not coming on or anything. Nothing is working because nothing's plugged in. The only sign of life is if you check the plug that's going over to the power supply that's not there. The power brick is sending out 14 volts like it's supposed to. So it's trying to come back. It's like Christine, it's helping itself. it just needs a little help, and it'll come back. Hopefully it won't kill anybody after it comes all the way back, but we'll see. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to get the power supply for the board and look it over a little bit. So let's see if I can find one of those in the back. Okay, so we're knee deep in power supplies. This is the power supply out of an Asteroids Deluxe. This is the power supply out of a Asteroids, and they're slightly different, just a little bit, not much. But the main well, I don't want to say the main difference, but one of the differences is the connector for the audio on this one is square, and the connector for the audio on an Asteroids is straight. And I think the reason they changed that was because because of what happened to this one. Basically, the thing can get knocked off because since it's all on a line, if the solder joints get cold, you can crack the thing right off the board. So apparently that has happened to this one at some point. So I am trying to rig up a replacement one. So I have this, which is the right part, but I don't have the pins that go in it to mount it to a board. But I have another Atari power supply that's a parts board. It's all burnt up and everything. So I have desoldered one of the connectors from it, and then there's a little tool you can use to pop those pins out, but I don't have the tool, so I'm cutting the pins out. So now I've got my 4 pins and my housing, and if I put it all together, I can mount it on the board, and voila, we'll have our power supply. Okay, so check it out. Looks completely factory original. Look at that. It's perfect. It's perfect. You can kind of see though why they changed the design. You could probably update it and hack the board a little bit and put a square one in there like the Asteroids Deluxe ones had, but you would have to change the harness in the game too and all that, and I'm not a big fan of that kind of stuff, so I'm just putting it back how it was. And then usually we change the caps, but after talking with some other people who do a lot of these online and things, we've all kind of decided that the caps never go bad really on them, so they haven't yet. So so on this one at least, we're going to try not replacing the caps because it doesn't ever seem to fix anything, and every time we get one in that's like this, it's basically working. I've just been replacing the caps as kind of a preventative thing, but you know, if they never really get stressed that much, there's really no purpose in changing them. So we're going to try it though. If they need change, we'll take it back out, but we'll put it in and then we can test the voltages out of it, and we'll see if we've got our 5 and our 12 and whatever else is supposed to come out of it. But it looks real good. That's going to be nice. This has been sitting on our shelf for years, so it'll be cool to get it back actually in an Asteroids where it came from. I think Asteroids is probably the only game that this was in, as far as I know. Okay, so now we've got our whole power supply set up in there. We've got the power brick, the power switch, both of the safety switches work, and we've got the power supply mounted. Look at my little connector. Isn't that perfect? And the coin door that they so mercilessly hacked, we found in our back room just the parts off of one. Look at this. It was like, now you're going to think this is the piece off of that. It's not. This is from a completely different door. We've had this for a long time in the back room. That is the plate that slides right on here, like something like that, right, and bolts all up in there, and it's got the little switch over here that you need for the test menu. So our next thing we have to do is we're going to have to get this coin door on there. Look at this too. See the harness? Very strange harness. All those pins. Would you look at that? Look at that. Just sitting there waiting on it. So we're gonna get this all back in there next, and then we'll have our little test switch and everything, so we can see if we can get any kind of noise or anything out of the PCB to help try to bring this thing back alive. So we're going to piece this old coin door back together. It's missing one of the little flaps down here. And that one, since this thing is so old, is made of metal. So looking through my parts box here, I found this one made of metal. So that'll go right up in there. And then the next thing that we have to get right is we have to put our buttons back in. I've got some new ones of those. And then they have a spring behind them. So I'm going to use some little compression springs so that they pop back out after you push them. And then once we get all that on there, the door is ready to put the plate back on. So we've got it back together, and now we've got coin door bulbs that come on. So now I can definitely tell if the machine's turned on, right? They've cut a little bit of wires where it was hacked. This must have been on a door that was kitted or something where it wasn't no longer they weren't using the original harness, so they had, I guess, tied wires into things, so I might have to reattach some of those. It's probably going to the coin mix. But the light bulbs are still wired the way they're supposed to be, and here's our little test switch that we need. So it's probably still wired the way it's supposed to be too, because usually whenever they kit something, they don't wire the test switch in. So we're ready to put the board in and turn it on and put it in test mode and see if we get any noise out of it. So this is the preliminary we're going to do on the board. I cleaned the edge connector, get it nice and shiny. It looks pretty good. The gentleman we got it from said that he knew that the 6502 was bad. So I took it out and looked, and one of the pins was broke off. So I put a new one in, or another one in. And then he had one ROM chip. Said that one was still in there. This is the vector generator ROM chip. So for anything to appear on the screen, this chip has to be in there. I looked online just to make sure that it was the right part number, and it was, so I put that back in. I haven't tested it yet. And then these three ROMs were all missing. Two of these he had replaced the socket. So I took three ROMs off of another board that I've got and put them on. Or these are actually PROMs. I believe these are all fine. Not sure about this one. Not sure about the 6502. But we're going to pop it in and test it and see if it will do anything. Installed the board, turned it on, checked all the voltages on the board. It's got all of its voltages. The lights are locked on. Basically, on a vector game, a lot of times it won't display anything on the screen because the board is not actually working, right? So I plugged the monitor in, and the spot killer light's coming on. So basically, it's not sending the correct signal to the deflection board. But on a vector game, well, on Asteroids at least, you can kind of tell what's going on by what the lights are doing on the start buttons. If they're just locked on, I've got it set on free play too. So what they should be doing is blinking. It's like this, as they're trying to tell you to press start. If they're just on all the time, it may be that it's in coin mode where you're supposed to put a quarter in, or it could just be that the CPU is completely locked up. And if you go into test mode, you should get like a beep, you'll either get a bunch of error codes beeping, or you'll just get one beep telling you that you put it in test mode. So basically the thing is locked up and not doing nothing. So we'll need to repair the PCB, but that's how far we've got it so far. What do you think? We'll end the video here and do the PCB repair all as a separate video. That will be up next time. So leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. And make sure to give us a thumbs up for taking the trouble to film it for you. And we will see you on the next video, where hopefully we'll get to see this thing come back to life.